people that want to get into these types of virtual backdrops and virtual production using LED or rear projection can be a good first step. You can play around on rear projection without too much cost. But I also recommend just playing around on a TV. Because you can get some really large TVs and get some shots that look really good, and just start learning about the technology. So we do sell a product that's specifically for that. It's called ARFX Home Studio. It's made for creators that were stuck at home. So basically for myself. And actually, we originally conceived of the product because I would have to do the demos here at home, at my home, on my TV. And a lot of filmmakers were like, it's great to have a big LED setup. Can I get the exact thing that you are showing me right now on your TV? That would be amazing just to learn. So we did come out with a product specifically for that, if people are interested.
And the cost of that is, you're saying right now the price is around 10 grand if I saw your website correctly, right?
Yeah. 9,500 is what we're asking for ARFX Home Studio. That comes with the workstation itself, as well as all the tracking. You additionally get technical support, knowledge-based video tutorials, and get to our expertise to support your projects. It also comes with a launch scene pack of about 100 backdrops. So it's really everything that somebody would need to get started in this space, and that's going to connect perfectly to your TV and your existing camera.
So let's talk about the backdrops, because that's the one thing that this all sounds fantastic, but unless you're a guy or a gal who knows how to render out real time, like how is the creation of the backdrops work? How can you create customs? Can you go out and shoot footage and put it on there? Does that work? Like explain that process, like the actual creation of the backdrop?
Sure. It's definitely the part of the process that still needs work. Like, this is not a perfect method the way that it's been done right now. And basically, the way that method is you build up the actual geometry of the scene, either in Maya or 3D Studio Max, Blender, whatever the case may be. Then you bring it into Unreal Engine, and at that point, you need to apply real-time materials and shaders and that type of stuff, lighting, specific types of lighting materials and shaders to the elements, and then at that point you're ready to shoot, and you can use the backdrop. So it's taken visual effects folks a little bit to figure out, okay, this is how I move from my traditional post methodology to pushing everything into a real-time engine, which is Unreal Engine is what we're currently working on. Which is one of the top real-time graphics engines in existence. They're definitely the leaders in this space.
And then this was also kind of pioneered in the video game space.
Absolutely, and that's I think when filmmakers start to look at this real-time space and realize they're kind of dipping their toes in the same waters as video game people, they can sometimes get intimidated because it's a different world, it's a different culture, and everything like that. But I think once they realize this key point, it starts to become a lot easier for them. In the video game world, this is built off of a world of indie makers and people who are coming out of the culture of technology and independent technology. So these people believe in sharing quite a bit. So for example, whenever a video game company finishes a major project and it has success or it doesn't or whatever, and they're basically done with those assets, they tend to then take every single one of the assets that they made and liquidate it onto a marketplace for you. So you can go and buy every single thing from the video game, or you can buy the select, most in-demand things from that video game. So as a filmmaker, when you come to Unreal Engine and you go to the Unreal Asset Store and you go to TurboSquid and all these other places where you can begin to get these assets, what you realize is you're sitting on a legacy of 20 plus years of asset creation where video game creators have just been making, put it on the marketplace, make, put on the marketplace. And that's been happening thousands of artists for decades. Oh, yeah. So you'll be able to go and get, your Lamborghini, your Forest, that type of stuff.
Your T-Rex. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So a lot of the time, what we're doing with a client when we're doing a location scout, which is like a virtual location scout, we'll actually go through the Unreal Asset Store and do like, what do you want? And they'll be like, okay, I want an alley. Okay, alley. We type it in, and we get 15 different alleys, and then we're doing basically going through the screenshots, going, does this feel right? Does that feel right? And that's actually how we're doing it in the moment.
That's
And then
amazing.
when we actually, isn't that crazy?
That's
And then when we actually need to like lock this specific shot, like on a, this is shot A, this is shot B, that type of thing. What we'll end up doing is literally on a Zoom chat like this, I'll be flying through the location, and they'll say, you know what, that looks pretty good. Like, I like that tree right there, that type of thing. Okay, so then I'll bookmark it into our system. And then when they show up on set, that's exactly what they saw on that Zoom call. And that's genuinely how we're doing these location scouts. Now, in the middle there, of course, we have amazing technical artists who are, making everything look photoreal as much as possible, getting the animation done, getting the scripted events done, effects and that type of stuff. So that's how it works.
Are you bringing in the locations when you're bringing in these files? Are you just bringing elements in and you're putting it all together, or are you building, like, are you getting a full blown alley with the garbage cans, with the lighting schemes? Like, what are you getting exactly?
You're getting everything. Like, either we're building off of one specific existing stock asset, which is royalty free, by the way. These are all royalty free. You can use them. You could go and you could make a Disney film with them, and technically the artist couldn't say anything. It's kind of a weird reality that we live in.
Right.
So they come with everything generally inside them. Or you can populate them with all sorts of whatever props you want. So there's full flexibility here to create the worlds that you want to be created.
Yeah, I mean, I was doing a show for Legendary, a TV show, and we were doing so many insane visual effects. Like, we did 150 visual effects a week for a full blown show. It was insane. And the only way we could do it is we went to Turbo Squid. And I'm like, okay, we need a dune worm. Okay, great. Let's get in. And we'd go and find them, and they were all pre-built, and then my VFX artists can go. Because if they would have to create those elements, we'd never make it. And
Exactly.
they're cheap. They're not super. I mean, I'm sure an alley or something a little bit more detailed is expensive, but relatively speaking, a lot cheaper than having to create it yourself.
Yeah, I mean, if you're just getting like a table and chair or something, you're probably spending like less than $30, maybe something
Right.
like that, for like a really, really nice one. Yeah, so it's a really interesting world once you get into fully digital environments, and I think it's the same kind of thing that happened when people jumped from physical sets to green screen. What's happening now is that process of you're ending up with more finalized assets now, whereas before, you'd have to fit it into the world of your film. Now you can find pretty much anything of any style, change it up a little bit, change the color or something like that, and you have an asset ready to go for your project. So it's a really odd time in media right now, because labor and creativity and artistry are getting massively undervalued, because all this stuff is out there for free. But at the same time, as a creator, as a filmmaker, it's almost like never been a better time, because you've got all this royalty-free assets. You've got the actual capability to utilize those assets in your project with our technology and similar technology. So you're like, it's a really interesting time. And what we're seeing from filmmakers is actually we're getting this sentence a lot. Wow, I've always had this concept that I would never have been able to do, and now I'm going to do it. And so we're working on a couple projects right now where these are projects where the artist, the director, they wanted to do this 5 years ago, but it's not a budgetary reality. And now we're able to lower that budgetary threshold for them so that vision that they have is actually achievable. And as a filmmaker, when I'm moving the needle on, like, it's great, it's great to make some money and that's awesome, right? But when I'm moving the needle on what is actually getting greenlit, that's amazing. And two, the creative vision that is actually getting executed upon that project greenlight. I mean, to be able to affect that in a meaningful way, it's very satisfying. And to me, that's what I'm working for.
So that was the other thing I want to talk about. The budgetary benefits of this is massive, because a show like Mandalorian could not be made without this technology. It'd just be too expensive. It'd be like making a half of a Star Wars film every episode, which
You got it. Like
so it's impossible.
it wouldn't have happened. Like Mandalorian plainly wouldn't have happened. And a lot of people might not realize that there was an actual live action Star Wars
Yeah.
film, Star Wars series that was attempted. Not too like maybe.
Oh, they had like
10
70. They had 70 episodes written. I remember, like
Oh my gosh.
Lucas had like 70 episodes written of that
Yeah.
thing. He was going to do it, but he
He
just
was gonna do it,
couldn't
but
couldn't figure it out.
they couldn't figure out because at that point they were using green screen, and so just the compositing and tracking and getting everything working
It's too much. Yeah.
with the beautiful animation that they were interested in getting, it just wouldn't have happened. Or frankly, it didn't happen. And I think that they've been pushing the live action Star Wars series concept until they saw this technology was accessible. And I like to say that we were part of actually pushing them over that edge. We did a showcase at Disney for about 2 days where we showed everyone the viability of this technology and really pushed it over the edge. And we've been definitely causing some trouble. Like when we come out here, and like, just to be clear, not everyone is a fan of what we're doing. You can imagine whose lunch we're eating when we're coming out and saying you never have to hire a compositor again. You never have to hire a roto guy again, that type of thing. So yeah, I mean, we got all sorts of pushback from the visual effects folks at, many different studios. But I think when you actually see, wait a second, we're not actually taking money out of someone's pocket. What we're doing is we're greenlighting a project that would have never happened.
Right.
Getting the cost of those shots that are appropriate for our technology way down, and for those shots where visual effects is still a perfect fit, post visual effects is still a perfect fit. They can continue to have those shots, and there's many shots in which our technology will never be suitable. Flying an X-wing down the trench and having those beautiful exterior shots of the X-wing and that type of stuff. There's no way that we're going to be relevant to that because there's no, the live action component of that is so minor. So like, there's always going to be a place for visual effects, and the fact is, they should be working on those amazing trench run sequences. They should not be working at separating, actresses' blonde hair from green. And that's
You're absolutely. They should be more for like if you try to do this with Avengers Endgame, the final battle. I was trying to think about when I saw this technology. I'm like, okay, how could have this been played out? Because I saw the behind the scenes of the Avengers Endgame, and it's just massive green. It's just massive amounts of green. But I'm like, how could have this worked in that environment? And maybe they could have probably dropped millions of dollars off of it if they would have structured certain shots within some sort of AR dome of some sort. But those giant massive shots when you've got 50 people running, maybe you could, maybe you couldn't. There's still going to be some CG comping in there, but there might be a lot of time and money saved.
Yeah,
Would you agree?
absolutely. So we actually did a case study on Night Flyers. We went and got comparison pricing for what if these shots had been achieved through traditional green screen visual effects. And what we found was pretty startling. We were looking at anywhere from a 62 to 73% reduction of budget for those shots. So meaning what? So we were cutting somewhere around 400 grand off of an episode budget just by being there and accomplishing these effects and composites for them on set, versus them having to capture a green, then send it out to a house to work on for 2 months, to come back just to give them the flaring and the beautiful play of light that they're getting free out of the box with our technology. So I think if you're trying to achieve a look that uses optical effects pretty heavily, flaring, heavy use of defocus and bokeh, chromatic aberration, that type of stuff, if you're looking for that, this is going to be a much better choice. Needless to say, reflection, refraction, smoke, liquids, fluids, all the type of stuff that gives you a headache on green screen. We're addressing all of those types of illusions in a much better way, because it's physical photons coming out of the screen, hitting the smoke, hitting the liquid, hitting the actor's face, hitting the set, and eventually bouncing into the lens, as opposed to having to replicate that artificially. I mean, it's just for those filmmakers, those DPs and directors that are looking for that look, it's just a much better choice for them. So that's what we've been seen be successful. But it's also, to be clear, this is a budgetary concern as well. Producers are liking this technology because it's saving them company moves. It's saving them post-production time. They're, potentially simplifying their post-production down. So if you're post supervisor, maybe you're working 2 months instead of 4 months. That's the reality that we're bringing to the table with this technology. It's great to talk about, bringing dreams, to fruition and that type of stuff. But if the dollars and cents
don't make sense,
then it's never going to happen. So at every moment of our company, we've always been, mindful of the fact that we're independent filmmakers and we're budget conscious. I know filmmakers like yourself who are working filmmakers, you're budget conscious as well. And it goes all the way up and down the ladder. Nobody is looking to spend more than they have to. So if we can create that narrative that, this is an opportunity for you, instead of having to go chase that tax incentive, which is basically what producers are doing. Like they're just, okay, we're going to, save money, go chase that tax incentive, go to Bulgaria, or wherever we have to go. Instead of doing that, cut 70% of your effects budget using this technology, and it's going to be suitable for, 90% plus of the shots that you need. And that's basically the narrative that we've been pitching. With that case study, that's actually available on our website. If people are interested in going and taking a look, just look for Night Flyers case study on the homepage. And then hopefully you'll see there, like, just how disruptive this technology is going to be. And here's the thing. It's so disruptive that I think without the pandemic occurring, we still would be struggling to get adoption. Now that the pandemic occurred, I've done demos for over 400 filmmakers and executives in the past 6 months. Virtual demos, like me in my living room in front of my TV, and just beginning to see that interest trickle in for Q1 of 2021. Yeah, it's going to be an exciting time for virtual production in general.
Now, do you believe, because of, this is a larger conversation, but I think you guys are definitely an ingredient in it, because the theatrical experience and the theatrical component of the distribution pipeline is pretty much gone right now as we're currently recording this. I'm sure it will come back in one way, shape, or form in the future, but I just read an article yesterday that Disney is completely doing a reorganization and they're completely focusing on streaming. So that means that Marvel movies and all these big tentpole movies are going to start going straight to streaming because they just like, this is the future. Theatrical is not where it's at. I'm sure it still will have a component of it, of course, but it's not what it was. And it's not, I don't think it's going to go back to pre-COVID levels anytime in the near future.
Yeah, I think analysts are saying there's an 81% drop in 2020. There's going to continue to be a 35% drop in theatrical in 2021, and only until the end of 2022 are we going to see a return to quote unquote normal, which is the end of 2019.
All right. So the one thing in regards to what your part is in this conversation in regards to the future of distribution and the projects and things is that studios are not going to be able to spend $300 to $500 million on tentpoles anymore because the return on the investment isn't as much there, because the theatrical, international theatrical components aren't nearly as big as, before an Avengers will make $2 billion, where I don't know, could it make that streaming? I don't know. Would I pay $30 opening day to see Endgame? Probably. And I believe there's probably at least 40 or 50 million people in the world that probably would. And that's that's $1.5 billion.
Yeah, I think it's such a weird time, because actually what's happening is now the established streamers, Amazon, Netflix, these guys are actually having conversations with the theater owners to see, like, could we fill this gap that the major studios are no longer filling, because they're just not generating and releasing the content. They just, basically the metrics don't make sense, right? they made these projects for a pre-COVID world, and they have to release it in a post-COVID world.
Right.
And it's just that those metrics are just never going to line up. So what's happening with the streamers is they were kind of thinking more of those metrics making sense for them. The business model that they have just fits a little bit better, and they have the flexibility to go out and do a quote unquote a minor theatrical release just to drum up some publicity for the project. So I think the way that it's trickling down to effects vendors and technology vendors working in entertainment like us is, one, the number of people that are looking for a budget conscious solution has spiked. Like, we're getting Paramount, looking for a budget conscious solution, Disney looking for a budget conscious solution. And that's just not where you were before. In fact, it was the opposite. If you went above a certain level in quote unquote, industry notoriety, industry status, you basically don't play with anyone below a certain level, right?
Correct.
Just because you're trying to keep that, that quality high, you're trying to keep the entire, social stratum high.
Right.
So it's definitely changed. And the other thing that's changed is you have a lot of people who are smart, who've been poised and waiting for a moment like this, and who are now attacking. And they're now, they see the established players all, tripping and falling and stumbling, and they're going, wait a second. This is my opportunity to have a conversation with that studio executive, to have a conversation with that filmmaker, to have a conversation with that talent agent that I wouldn't have been able to have prior. And a lot of the people who are being successful now are people who have experience in effects, in virtual production, and then also in working at smaller budgets. So they're willing to have the conversation with us, on behalf of these major studios in a way that we wouldn't necessarily have had before. And that's been super interesting because, these are major filmmakers who want to have these conversations, who are looking to become the virtual production guy at this studio. And that's an exciting thing to be hearing from filmmakers.